May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, including the additional items that have been brought forward? Mayor Marakis, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any questions or comments on the agenda? Okay. Call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Okay. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay. That's good. We have one presentation this evening, and that's by our Director of Community Services, Robin McDougall.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask that Abby Rucci Kanungo please come forward and stand in the middle, and also if Mayor Marakis would join us to stand in the middle. To give you a bit of a summary of this presentation, Abby is a part-time customer service representative working at the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex and at the Aurora Family Leisure Complex. In addition to working at the town of Aurora, Abby is also employed by Metrolinx. While working at her Metrolinx job at the Newmarket GO station on October 5th, 2018, Abby became aware of two people on the tracks in an apparent suicide attempt. Responding quickly to this situation, Abby went out and spoke to both of them, persuading them to get off the tracks and back onto the platform safely. Abby then took the two people to a nearby coffee shop and purchased coffee and food for them while awaiting further assistance. Not only are we recognizing Abby for her life-saving actions that day, but also for the compassion she showed in how she managed the situation. While this did not take place during her work with the town, her actions that day are reflective of the care and compassion Abby demonstrates daily towards citizens of Aurora and all customers, and reflective of the commitment to care and excellence of all town staff. Well done, Abby.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall, and a very great job by Abby. Before we continue, just I noticed that former councillor Jeff Tom is in the audience. If you can wave and maybe do a lap around council chambers, that would be great. Thank you. So we have two delegations this evening. So our first delegation is Ms. Miju Stinson regarding item R1, extension of the interim control bylaw for the stable neighborhood study area. If you can come forward, please state your name, and please be reminded that you have 5 minutes for the delegation, and you'll receive a signal when 1 minute is remaining.
My name is John Stinson, the husband of Miju, who is in the audience this evening. We're here to, we're looking for an exemption from the interim control bylaw for a lot at 29 Church Street in Aurora. And the three main reasons we're looking for that exemption are that what we are proposing to do with that lot is to build a small home that is not a monster home, which I believe certainly is in the wording of the interim control bylaw. It was talked about a lot. So we're not planning a monster home, but a home that is similar to the existing teardown that is on that property. The second reason we are looking for an exemption is that we need access to the Committee of Adjustment. And the main reason we need access to the Committee of Adjustment is because the particular lot is designated as a legal non-conforming lot, and as such, it is a very small lot, and anything moving forward will have to maintain that legal non-conforming status. And I'll explain that a little bit later, and I'll summarize the third reason by saying that we understand that exemptions have been made in the past to the interim control bylaw. As a little bit of a background on this is that my wife and I, we're not developers. We have been long-time residents of Aurora, 30 years. And we raised our family here, and we're going to retire here. So we just recently retired, and we wanted to build a smaller home. We looked around Aurora, we found a very small lot. We loved it, and we want to build a small home on it. So we're not a developer, and we're looking to live happily ever after in Aurora in that particular lot. The other thing we want to do is we want a new structure there. And so we looked for a small lot and an older home. So we found the older home, and we have to have a new build because also living with us is our daughter who is confined to a wheelchair. So we're going to need a little bit of consideration. So we can't do a resale because usually homes are not considered in any sense barrier-free. Again, not building a large home, but we certainly have to take into consideration when we build a small home that the wheelchair is going to have to get around the building. Just a little bit on the non-conformity of the existing lot. So you've got side and rear and front yards, and I'm just going to give an example. The rear, and one of the things that we're doing is that we're actually improving the conformity of the designation. So right now the existing structure is actually sitting on the back lot line. It's just as an example, and this is an R3 lot, which, as I understand it, requires. Do I have it here? 25 feet from the back to the house, and it's sitting right on the back of the lot, the existing structure is. So when we take this old structure down, we're going to move that back 8 feet, but we're still going to be requiring that access to the Committee of Adjustment to say that, well, that's okay, you can do that. So the house is not going to be that much bigger, and I'll draw your attention to a diagram in a few minutes on the back page. So we are improving some of the nonconformity, and we're keeping the side yards are conforming, and we're keeping those completely conforming, so we're not doing anything with those. One of the, if you look at the, just quickly, if you wanted to look at the diagram, you can see that the, I don't have the diagram in front of me, but if you look at the lot, and which is on the back page, you can see that I believe the existing structure is in yellow. It's a casual diagram, but based on an old survey. The existing structure is in yellow and the new one is in pink. And you can see that it's basically the same structure. We've just rejigged it off that back lot line and wanted to keep it in keeping with the existing neighborhood. So again, in summary, we're looking for an exemption to the interim control bylaw to build a small home. It seems like we got caught by a large net where small fish, when you're trying to control some other things, and I'm sure there's other issues that need to get to the Committee of Adjustment and that are being backlogged, and maybe you'll perceive that we are one of those people. So we're not building a monster home, and we require access to the Committee of Adjustments, and we believe also that these kinds of exemption at least have happened at least once in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stinson. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegations? Oh, to read, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Humphreys. Questions or comments? We have Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Stinson, for being here. I want to just sort of expand on one of the reasons that you touched upon, which is really accessibility for your daughter. You say that one of the things you'd like to do is build wheelchair accessibility in the new expansion. Is your current home problematic for your daughter? And if you can sort of share some of that information, that would be helpful.
We've been in Aurora for 30 years, so the home we live in, I raised 3 daughters, so it's a larger home, 4 bedrooms. It has an elevator in it. So one of the things we're doing is to get rid of the elevator. I mean, it's not problematic in our existing home, but it's too large of a house, so we're downsizing. 2 of the daughters have moved out. So does that answer your question?
No, I mean, in this house now, if the council doesn't allow you to move forward.
The current house, we don't live in the current house that we're.
I'm talking about this house that you're asking for the revisions for.
29 Church Street.
Yes.
Has no accessibility to it at all. It's 100.
That's what I'm getting at. I want to understand.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so
I want to understand whether the 29 Church Street is problematic for your daughter.
Stairs and it's old, and yeah, there's no way that. I don't think she could get in the building. And it was never our intent to move into that structure. So it was always our intent to build a new structure on that lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, thank you very much for coming this evening. So you're building a new structure in this location, and what's the approximate size of the house that you're building? Is it going to be a 2-story, 1-story?
Well,
thoughts are?
we hope it's smaller than the smaller the better is what we're trying to do. 2,400 square feet is sort of the high-end target that we're looking at, and we're hoping that we could. And we're just looking at that. And again, we're afraid to move ahead with official diagrams and things because of this issue that's facing us here. But a story and a half, maybe part of it might have a second story, but certainly not a 2-story completely. But that's the sort of the idea that we're looking at, around 2,400 square feet.
Okay. Thank you. So from your perspective, it's not going to be a very tall structure.
Oh gosh, no.
It's going to be conforming, look like your neighbors?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. In fact, that's one of the... Before we even knew that this was an issue, we looked around and said, well, how do we make our house fit into this? We're not trying to make something that stands out in any stretch. Why would we want to do that? That's not our intent. We want things to fit in and look aesthetically pleasing with the surrounding area.
Thank you. I mean, that's the key, right? The whole reason we have this interim bylaw is just to make sure that we can have some control over the stable neighborhood areas, and that the homes that are going to be built there or renovated or maintained look and feel sort of like they belong. And we've had some real large structures that are not.
I know.
Yeah, as you know, and I appreciate that, and understanding what you're. So your plan then is to sell your existing home, move to this one once it's ready to go. It's wheelchair accessible for your daughter,
That's right.
And then you're moving on to the next phase of your lives, retirement, and
right.
enjoy your new home in downtown Aurora.
Yeah, we hope to anyway. And just to speak to your question exactly, it's because you mentioned height. So I measured the height of the existing structure, and I forget what it is, but our one was going to be, I think, 2 feet lower.
So just to clarify, your existing dream home or final home?
No, the existing house that's there that we want to take down is, I forget what it is, 30 feet, I'm guessing.
Sure.
And I thought, our perspective idea of what we're building is about 28 feet, so it was lower than what the existing structure was.
Well, I appreciate that. And then just to close, you want to get to these committee of adjustment, because you're actually going to provide that back lot space that is really currently allowed. Because right now it's right against the lot line, you were saying, this existing structure, so you're going to move it a bit so that gives you a little bit of a backyard, and people have some relief and have a little backyard in there, and
the non-conformity of the lot.
Okay.
Which we think is
will
a good
benefit
thing.
everybody.
It benefits everybody. It makes it look better. I mean, it's actually odd looking. If you go, if the neighbors look at the lot, there's this house in it. It sits right on the lot line. It's not often you see that.
Yeah, it's different.
So we're moving that back.
It was built back then. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I understand that your concerns, and it sounds like you've got a good plan. And depending on what happens here and later tonight, we will trust that you'll keep, of course, your dreams come true and make our town continue to look lovely, because that's really important to us. And this is why we have the protection bylaw in right now.
Thank you for listening to my petition. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Hi. I'm looking at the design that you've provided to us. I'm not clear. Is the lighter pink the existing, and the red what you want to build?
I'll say I haven't got it in front of me. I believe I think it actually says on the code that the yellow is the existing structure.
Okay, the yellow's okay.
And I think I believe the pink is the idea of a new structure, and how we can move it out to the side, because we're not going into the whole idea is we're not going to we are going to conform with those setbacks that are side yard setbacks, even though we're going out a little bit. It's completely conformity to the R3 zoning.
Thank you. I mean, for putting that up. Thank you. I'm a little confused. You said you're going to build a story and a half.
Right.
So the 10-meter permission that's in there now is to allow for a 2-story house. And you want to have a height of 9.5 feet. And this is going to be a 1 or 1.5 story home?
Meters, I think that...
sorry, well...
I think let's make sure that I'm saying the right thing. The code is for 10 meters, I believe, currently, and there's nothing about the new structure that goes beyond that. We're not breaking that particular at all. And in
No,
fact, we're not breaking from the existing structure. So not only we're not planning to go beyond the height in the R3 zoning, we're not going above what the current structure is.
Yes, I understand that. Thank you. What I was just trying to understand for myself is that we have that 10-meter height to allow for a 2-story home.
Right?
You want to have 9.5 meters,
Right.
5.5 meters less, and yet you're only going to put up a 1 or 1.5-story home?
A 1.5-story home, meaning a 1.5-story home is still a 2-story home. It's just part of the house is 2-story and part of it is 1-story. Typically, that's what it means in my understanding. So 1.5-story home, part of the home would be a 2-story, but within the constraints that we've outlined already.
Is it 9.5 meters to the top of the roof? Do you know?
Of the plan, yes, I believe it to be less than that, like around 9 is what I believe it to be.
To the top of the roof?
To the top of the roof, yes.
Thank you. And you have the plan of the house?
No.
Okay.
No, we do not. Now we have sketches of what we're planning to do, but we're very afraid of spending a lot of money on official plans for this house, and when we found that this was an issue here. So we don't know what to do about as we progress forward. We certainly have an idea of what we're trying to do. We certainly put that down in a lot of detail, but we're certainly not going ahead with some formal drawings on that until we can go to the Committee of Adjustment and have that looked at.
That makes sense. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Cook. So does the resident have to go through any kind of a site plan control process with the planning department?
Mr. Cook?
Thank you. I'll ask that later. Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for coming and speaking today and giving us a really detailed synopsis of your situation. It's very quite clear what it outlines. I like that you're actually improving the rear yard, but I guess my question is, when did you actually purchase the property?
Last year. I think it was August, September. That's how recent it was.
So after the interim control bylaw had already been enacted?
After that was in, and it caught us completely by surprise. And I don't know why it did. I mean, I guess in a normal purchase of a home, I don't typically go to a town and find out what the new bylaws are concerning these kind. Maybe one should, but I didn't, and we didn't. One of the things we did do, and you thought we would run into it, was this house, as a lot of the homes are that are of that age, it was on the historical list, and we had it taken off the historical list because there's no redeeming qualities to it. So that action took place last year. So during that process, we didn't know, and all of a sudden, we closed on the purchase of the lot, and then boom, we find out, oh, in fact, it was a neighbor who told us that. He said, oh, did you know, it was the neighbor behind who was doing construction. He was a construction person, and we were looking at the house, and we had closed on the property. He says, well, you know, you can't do anything with the Committee of Adjustment. And I thought, I wonder what he's talking about. And I went in and I found out, oh my gosh, we can't do anything with this. So that's when all this started for us, and a little bit of a hold pattern for us. And it's a little bit concerning for us because we've made that purchase and we're trying to move forward, and this is holding us up in this limbo to get this project off the ground.
So moving forward, say it doesn't get lifted in your instance, is it a viable plan for you to build a house accessible for your daughter if you had to build within the current parameters? The
answer is no. We'd have to do something else, catastrophic. And what concerns me is if we have to, because if this stays, no one would be able to do anything with this property. That's the issue, right? And we'd have to sell it or do something like that, and we would have gotten ourselves into a real pickle with this particular situation. But
and your lot size is currently smaller than the zoning lot size.
That is correct. That is correct. This is R3 is 460 meters. This is 360.
300 and something.
360. So the lot itself is even the lot size does not conform to the R3 zoning aspect of the town.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions, I'll call the vote then to receive and refer the delegation. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes. Mr. Clerk, thank you. Mr. Stinson, thank you. You may be seated. We have a second delegation, Mr. Peter Smith, representing the Regency Acres, Aurora Heights, and Town Park Ratepayers Associations regarding item R1, extension of the interim control bylaw for the stable neighborhood study area. Please state your name again, sir, and be reminded that you have 5 minutes, and you'll receive a signal when 1 minute is left.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Mayor, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. Happy New Year, and wish you all a very productive terms of office. My name is Peter Smith, and I'm the president of the Regency Acres Ratepayers Association. My compatriot here is Mr. Neil Aslan from the Town Park Ratepayers Association. The topic for tonight's presentation concerns the renewal of the interim control bylaw. We would like to remind Council that protection of stable neighborhoods was a very hot topic during the election, and one that was supported by many candidates and councillors. We respectfully ask that you honor your commitment in this matter. The official plan was intended to preserve the character and values of our stable neighborhoods. The interim control bylaw is widely acknowledged as providing no meaningful protection against excessive or incompatible development, i.e. monster homes. Residents are not experts when it comes to rules and regulations which govern bylaws. We often find them obscure, confusing, and contradictory, and turn to elected representatives and staff to provide answers. We request that a simple explanation of the interim control bylaw be made so that everyone can understand the process and the consequences. One very important question is, does the interim control bylaw interfere or prevent the placement of more important zoning bylaws which could be passed now? Another option will be put forward later tonight, and we ask that it be considered along with the other choices before making the final decision. The ratepayer groups representing the 3 stable neighborhoods are undecided about the value of the continuation of the interim control bylaw. If we renewed, we need assurances that it is only a temporary measure, which will be replaced with new bylaws in the very near future. We look forward to the public planning meeting on January 30th and hope that substantial progress can be made to resolve the zoning bylaw issues for stable neighborhoods. Thank you for your attention and support.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Neil Aslan, and I live on Royal Road. I just wanted to speak to one of the points that Peter just brought up concerning the interim control bylaw. And I think that we have spoken to most of you before the election. We spoke to staff more recently in November. And we met with you, Mr. Mayor, I think later in November. And we've all sort of realized, as Peter pointed out, that the interim control bylaw really didn't offer us any protection because we're already left with bylaws that are not conforming to the official plan and therefore are not protective by nature. So I just want to offer another alternative to that. And we did speak to you, Mayor Marakis, during that meeting, and we said that once the report comes out, if we weren't satisfied with the contents of the report and the direction of it, that you would, if it wasn't addressing our concerns, that you would make a motion that
Sorry, Mr. Aslan, you have 1 minute left.
Okay, that we would make a motion to change the actual bylaws until such time that we're satisfied and can move forward with any compelling bylaws that will address each neighborhood separately. And I just want to read this quickly, and then I'll leave it at that. It said that the mayor believes that the consultant's report will address many of our concerns. However, if he's not satisfied that the proposal addresses the three-pronged approach he envisions, and if the ratepayers associations are also dissatisfied with the outcome, he would be willing to table a revised bylaw to serve as a temporary measure while further work is done to develop more appropriate bylaws for each stable neighborhood. The common ground that the three associations could live with as a temporary measure would be 9-meter height limit to the peak of the roof for two-story homes, possibly with a lower limit for two-story homes with flat roofs, 7.5 meters for one-story homes, also measured to the peak. 25% lot coverage for 2 stories and 30% lot coverage for a bungalow. So I just want to bring that forward, that it could be something you would discuss tonight as an alternative to the interim control bylaw, just changing the existing bylaws on a temporary basis, but until we come back with something that is a permanent change to the bylaws. But until such time, we need something that is going to protect us. We've been up until now with no protection, and as far as we're concerned, the interim control bylaw doesn't really do anything to change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aslan. Mr. Smith, may I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegation? Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Gilliland. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. We have Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the delegates. Just to confirm that it's your understanding that the interim control bylaw isn't doing enough to protect the neighborhoods. Is that what I heard?
If I may, the whole purpose of this endeavor is to change the bylaws that are existing. Whatever we have is not creating compatible dwellings within these stable neighborhoods. So the interim control bylaw is only was established to, not have any committee of adjustment. As was pointed out by a previous delegate, there are no committee of adjustment considerations beyond the existing bylaws, but the existing bylaws are already not compatible. So we feel, as a temporary measure, we can do this blanket bylaw, so to speak, that would protect us until we have something that is a permanent, decision that comes out of council.
Okay, so I'll be asking staff to clarify that and see where we end up.
Of course.
Mayor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Neil and Peter. Thank you for coming. You made mention that we met, and yes, we did, and we had a great conversation, and I think that we came up with some solutions as far as waiting until we get that report. And so I'm just wondering, has it changed now? Because our conversation, from what you stated and from what I believed at the time, is that we said that we would wait till that report comes out, and my understanding is that report hasn't come out yet. And so now are you suggesting that we look at making these changes that you're asking for before we even get the report and look at some permanent solutions?
I think in lieu of the interim control bylaw, that this would be a step that is more measured and more protective in the meantime. We don't know that any of us will be satisfied with the report, and maybe we will, but we really don't feel that there's a point in reintroducing an interim control bylaw that isn't doing anything. In some cases, it's hindering people who have a very minor variance, and we've seen a few come to council over the last few months. And so, yes, we have changed. Just that we were thinking, if we put an interim control bylaw, how can we make it more protective? But because of the terms of the Act, Planning Act, I believe it is, you cannot change those terms. You can only renew it for one additional year. So we really thought hard how we could offer some protection in the meantime, and we feel that changing the actual bylaw would do that. And it's temporary. It would be until such time, but it would take your step, your suggestion, and just move it forward rather than running towards this post that we never seem to. The post keeps moving forward in terms of deadlines. This would just do this, protect us, and then move forward with something that we can all live with, going forward.
Thank you. And just, I guess, a comment to go away with before we get to it. Everyone does realize that we are going to be dealing with this January 30th, and we could have some permanent solutions on that day. So from what I'm hearing is that now some are requesting that we make some changes before we even see that report and possibly make those permanent solutions. So I think that's, considering we're so close to making those possible permanent solutions, I still maintain, as when we spoke, that we wait until that date, and then if we're not satisfied at that date, then we can look at alternate options. But thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Okay.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you very much for coming out and speaking to us today and giving us your thoughts, and also coming up with some numbers and facts on how you guys want to proceed forward. It really helps council really understand your needs moving forward. I see that you're representing all three ratepayers associations today, so I'm really happy to see you guys all out. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, and as I can't ask staff right now, but I will item number 1. I think there may be a concern, I could be wrong, that if we put an interim control bylaw in, we may not be able to do any other adjustments in the bylaw. Is that a concern at all?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I know we can't put in a moratorium for at all, and we're just concerned that we have some protection before the building season really gets in full swing.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to ask staff if it's possible to have an interim control bylaw extension and still change a zoning bylaw on a temporary basis at the same time. I don't think that is contradictory. But it is a good idea. Thank you. It's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you so much for coming this evening, and I appreciate you again, as Councillor Gilliland had mentioned, that all the three ratepayers group together. I think it's wonderful to see you guys group. Just in terms of what Mayor Marakis mentioned, like January 30th, we're going to have all the outcome of the consultants' feedback. And I mean, I do actually really like that you've come with concrete, 9 meter for 2-story, 7.5 for 1, 25% 2-story, 30% bungalow. I think it's good that you've got those numbers out there, and it's a good, it's a good place to be. And then if there's any adjustments outside of that, then the process goes forward. But I'm just wondering if, with the 2 weeks, is it your concern that 2 weeks will come, and again, this interim bylaw still won't be enough after once we receive all the feedback and work towards new bylaw? Is that your major concern? Just want to clarify.
Is there a time limit for them?
Sure. My concern is that we're this far along. We're 15 months into the council process. There has also been some time before that. So we're, getting close to 2 years of figuring this out and figuring out what our options are. And the report now, as late coming as it is, we don't know what it is, and I understand it could be great, and if it is, then it is, and that's wonderful. But we also need time to work through it, and we need time as residents to understand it. This is not our profession. You must understand.
Absolutely.
We're wading through pages and pages of bureaucracy at the provincial level, an official plan, a comprehensive zoning bylaw, and using terms that we're not accustomed to. So it takes us time to give it some thought, and because there hasn't really been a lot of consultation directly with the consultant who's preparing it, we don't know what to expect, and we may need the opportunity to meet with the consultant as well. I mean, we just want to make sure that we have something protecting us going forward, because up until now, everybody has tried to help us in the way that you can, but we feel at this point we're just punting it further, and we want to sort of get protected now. And if it is easy enough to change the bylaws, as was suggested, on that temporary basis, we don't see the reason why we just can't do that instead of the interim control bylaw. Just put that protection in, and it's, when it's 40 below, you don't go out in a t-shirt, you go out, you put your coat on, you don't mess around. So we just feel we're at that point now where we just want to do it and skip the step. That's all.
Great.
Thank you.
No, thank you I appreciate that, and I can hear it. I feel it. Again, we all talked to many residents, and it's tough to drive around in your coat now and hats and see these things happening. It's difficult to look at them. I agree with you there, and I think as Councillor Gartner mentioned, we'll ask staff what this would mean if we can do this as an interim. Again, all of us really don't know what this means. Hopefully better than what we've seen obviously out there. And then how difficult would it be once we get the consultant's feedback and be able to put some permanent bylaws in place that'll protect ourselves and just from all fronts, from all viewpoints. So I think I'm looking forward to hearing what staff has to say and moving forward, because we need to do something. It's gone on a long time. So thanks.
You have a question? Sure, I can allow that.
Is the passing of the interim control bylaw a time-sensitive issue, or can it be left until after we get the consultant's report?
It is a time-sensitive issue. It expires in the next week or so.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. If there's no further questions for the delegation, I'll call the vote to receive and refer. All those in favor? Oppose? Okay, that passes. Thank you. So that brings us to the consent agendas. Are there any questions on the item in the consent agenda? Okay, so Councillor Gardner.
So we're talking about the C items?
Yes, C1 and C2.
Thank you. I didn't realize it was going to be quite presented this way, but so I wasn't prepared to speak to it. When I attended the meeting at Lake Simcoe in December, I received an agenda with the past minutes as well, and the CAO, Mr. Walters, was very concerned about the plan changes by the provincial government and the possibility of cutting funding for the Ontario Drinking Water Source Protection Program, and to place that on the responsibility of the municipalities. Another word, a download. So there was primarily the issue of safety as this protection program came into place after Walkerton, and has done a very good job regulating the quality of our drinking water. And the other concern, of course, would be if it gets downloaded to the municipalities, that would be a real hit to our tax bill. So Mr. Walters wrote to the clerk in a letter of December 6th, and he asked that all of the members of the Lake Simcoe region look at his letter and endorse his concerns. So what we have tonight on the agenda is the December 6th letter received by Mr. Clerk, and Mr. Clerk and I were talking about it, and hoping to present it to council to get council's endorsement. Are there any questions? This is very complicated, but it's also very simple. If the province downloads this to the municipalities all over Ontario, we could be back in a situation where we have a similar problem to Walkerton. So that's the A and the most important. And the B is, if these programs are downloaded to all the municipalities, it's going to be a very costly program, and we're going to have to pick it up on our taxes. So I'm hoping that council will support the letter written to Minister Phillips by Mr. Walters, the CEO of the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and agree that Aurora will send its own letter down to the province addressing the concerns. The general concerns, I mean, these are the general concerns, I would guess, of all municipalities all over the province. So, and if you haven't had a chance, this was an add-on, so if council hasn't had a chance to read the letter and wants to think about it till next week, that's fine with me, because it wouldn't get approved till next week. But it is a very important topic that could very easily affect public health.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other questions on or comments on the consent items? Okay, so no other comments, so may I have a motion to approve the consent items C1 and C2. Councillor Gilliland and seconded by Mayor Marakis. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes, Mr. Clerk. Advisory meeting minutes. We have one. May I have a motion to approve item A1? Mayor Marakis, Councillor Gilliland. Any questions or comments on the advisory committee meeting minutes? Okay, if not, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Under new business, they moved a motion which really spoke to having a member of the AHS on the Heritage Advisory Committee. But have we not already appointed members for the Heritage Advisory Committee? So just perhaps the clerk can just address that one point.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely correct, Councillor Thompson, and staff incorporated that into the Heritage Advisory Terms of Reference, which we brought to Council in December, and Council passed those, so we had no need to put the new business motion forward to Council.
Thank you very
much. The Aurora Historical Society will have a member on the Heritage Board this year, or this term.
Okay. Try it again. Call the vote. All in favor of approving the advisory committee meeting minutes? Opposed? That passes. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the regular items. We have R1. Can someone move that, please? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gilliland, seconds. Questions or comments? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Cook. If an interim control bylaw is put in place, that does not prevent the zoning bylaws from being changed in any way, does it?
Mr. Cook?
Sorry. So through you, Mr. Chair, the council may choose to extend the interim control bylaw and continue to review the study. If council chooses to amend the zoning bylaw at that time, council will first have to lift the interim control bylaw and then pass the new bylaw for those areas. But I do like to inform council that before the town can pass the bylaw, proper notices will need to be adhered to according to the Planning Act. such as holding public planning meetings and going through the appeal process.
I think you need to, I think you need to repeat that again. So if we put it, if we put an interim control bylaw in place, before we can take it off to change our zoning bylaws for the R3s, then it has to go out to the residents, and would we have to have a public meeting on that?
Mr. Cook?
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. It's much like most zoning bylaws. It has to go through a public process.
If we didn't, thank you. If we didn't, through you, Mr. Chair, if we didn't have an interim control bylaw in place, and we wanted to change the zoning on the R3s, would we have to go out to the community to tell them what changes were being made?
Mr. Cook?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. Even without the interim control bylaw, you will have to follow the Planning Act public process.
Okay, so it doesn't hinder it in any way. It would be, we'd have to do the public process in either case. Thank you. Can I ask a question through you to Mr. Mayor?
Sure. Go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
And I believe we had this conversation before, so it's. I mean, I think you probably said it to many people. So when we have the public planning meeting on the 30th, if the community is not happy with the recommendations, we as a council, because it's a council meeting, could put a motion forward changing the existing zoning bylaws. I think that's what I understood.
Mr. Cook, can you answer that, or?
Okay, I'll take that. Yes, certainly that could be an alternative motion that after council receives the information, one of the motions from council could be to direct staff to present a draft bylaw to the public at a future public planning meeting. That certainly could be one of the recommendations from council.
So to be clear, we wouldn't be able to do it at that meeting. We could make a motion that we wanted to do it, but it would have to go through a planning process. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Council cannot pass the bylaw at the January 30th meeting. It'll have to go through a public process to inform the residents of Aurora what the proposed amendments are exactly, and has a chance to review the draft bylaw before the bylaw could be motioned for approval.
I think Mr. Mayor wanted to chime in here.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cook, maybe I understood wrong as well, but my understanding is that we've gone through the public process. We've developed the process where it's going to be coming to us with options on what changes we would be looking at possibly implementing within this area. And so therefore our options, similarly to any other public planning meeting that comes for us in any application, we would be making a recommendation to possibly move forward with those options to a general committee meeting, which means that we wouldn't have to fall back into a public planning meeting, because we've already done 3 public planning meetings, is my understanding. So at that moment in time, if we're not happy with some of the options that are being presented to us, we could possibly look at making some small minor changes. If what's being presented is 9 meters and we want 8.5, we could say, well, listen, we want to make an amendment to 8.5, and then we could still move forward to that general committee meeting instead of having to go back to public planning. But that would be an option that council could still afford itself to go back to public planning, but we could go to general committee. Am I not correct on that?
Mr. Cook?
So if you might recall, I believe we had a statutory public planning meeting in the summer of 2018. And at that point, that was the statutory public planning meeting for what the proposed changes from staff was going to be. And at that meeting, that had full notice from the Planning Act on what the changes are. But at that meeting, I believe council had a tie vote, which means it's a refusal of those particular proposal. So which referred down to where we are today, to propose a new set of criteria, new sets of zoning bylaws that the public has not seen just yet. So it reverts back to the public planning stage.
So can I just follow up, Mr. Chair?
Just as one more time.
One more time, thank you. I appreciate the latitude, thank you. But we will be at a public planning meeting.
That's correct. The January 30th is a public planning meeting. However, at the January 30th public planning meeting, there's no specific proposal from the town to inform the public exactly what the measures are changing prior to the meeting.
So then, sorry, Mr. Chair. So then, are we being told that we have no choice but to have another public planning meeting after this public planning meeting? We can't go to general committee? I find that very hard to believe from what our normal practice is.
Mr. Cook, did you want to tackle that last question before I give the floor back to Councillor Gardner?
It's my understanding that because the town's proposing a brand new bylaw, it does need to go through the procedures of the Planning Act, and the Planning Act requires a public planning meeting.
Councillor Gardner, you still have the floor. Do you have any other questions?
What is the required notice to the public that we have to give before a public planning meeting?
Mr. Cook?
It's the same amount of notice that we would give for those for private amendments to the zoning bylaw. There is I believe, 20 days, a day's notice for the public meeting to occur, stating what the proposal is specifically.
Councillor Gardner?
So we would have the public planning meeting. If the public planning meeting said we wanted to change the bylaw by X, Y, and Z, then that notice would have to go out to the public for 21 or 20 days before the public planning meeting. And then we would have the public planning meeting, and then the vote at the public planning meeting would at that point carry into a bylaw, or at that point would have to go out to the public, again, as you said before, as notice.
Mr. Cook?
Sure. If we'll follow standard procedure like a private amendment, it'll go through the public planning, go through the GC and council subsequently.
So the public planning meeting on the 30th would just be the first step in the process, which is public planning meeting, another public planning meeting, GC and council.
Yeah, so on January 30th, the purpose of that meeting will have council to direct staff on exactly what they like to see done of a result of this stable neighborhood study. If council chooses to pass some type of a bylaw stating specifically what type of height reduction, lot coverage, or whatever other amendments to the actual bylaw, the subsequent public plan meeting would be February 27th, would then present that material to the rest of the population in Aurora to get a chance to comment on those specific changes. And after that, we will be approved or refused, or further discussion at general committee, and ultimately enacted at a council meeting.
So we're looking at mid-March.
Correct.
So we're looking at the end of March. Okay, that's all for now. A surprise and disappointing.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Councillor Kim. I'll be brief. I mean, I support the extension of the interim control bylaw beyond January 30th. I look forward to the January 30th meeting and seeing the reports and identifying some more permanent solutions to the issue. But I would like to address the delegate who came before it. I'd like to put an amendment on the floor to exempt 29 Church Street from the interim control bylaw.
Okay, will someone second that? Councillor Humphreys? Sure.
Bylaw in place, we had talked about, that there was certainly intent to try and rein in some of these situations, but that there would be, on occasion, exceptions to the rule, and we would evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. I think we've heard from the delegate this evening that what they're proposing is reasonable, and that in my perspective, we're not approving what they're doing, we're just allowing them to move forward in the public planning process. They still have to go to the Committee of Adjustment, they still have to go through site plan approval, so there are still some steps that they have to go through and address that are some checks and balances against what they proposed tonight, and I would expect staff to hold them to what they've proposed this evening in terms of the size and scale and setbacks and so forth, but I'm comfortable with proposing the exemption so that they can move through that process. I think that it was never the intent of the interim control bylaw to stop everything.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. And I just, along with Councillor Thompson, I feel the same way. I've looked through the information that we were provided from this couple, and for them, it looks like they're going to be actually reducing some of the areas that the current structure size and height. So I'm looking forward to having hopefully a beautiful structure built there that looks like the existing neighborhood. And as Councillor Thompson mentioned, that staff will hold everyone accountable to making sure that it's just that, and everyone can be pleased with the structure. Thanks.
Councillor Gardner on the amendment.
Thank you. I'm opposed. The two things that were most important to the residents in the stable neighborhoods were lot coverage and height. We don't know, we haven't seen the design, we don't know how high it's going to be, 9.5, but it could be a much greater height to top of roof. And we're trying to keep the lot coverage in check. We're allowing 40%. This is totally not in keeping, I believe, with the intent of what the residents have been fighting for, so I am opposed.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to staff. Because we haven't gotten a report from staff, we have some information from the delegate. And I don't know whether or not staff have seen the report from the delegate and the statistics that are in that report and the accuracy of them. Staff haven't, I believe, and I'd like to confirm, reviewed this application.
Mr. Cook, can you respond to that?
It's not standard procedure for staff to review these type of requests, and I believe last year, the delegate spoke directly to council about this matters, about exemptions. However, I did have a chance to look through his statistics, and it seems to align well with the accuracies of what the existing R3 zonings are.
Okay. So in terms of timeline, should everything align, we're talking somewhere around the end of March where we could have a new zoning bylaw, potentially. Is that fair to say if everything aligns properly?
Mr. Cook?
That is correct. My understanding is a March 26th council meeting where, if everything goes well, like you mentioned, then a bylaw could be enacted on that night. And
in doing so, we would remove the interim control bylaw. Once we adopt the new one, we would be removing the interim control bylaw. Is that accurate?
That's correct. You would lift the interim control bylaw first and then pass the new proposed bylaw.
Okay. I'm somewhat hesitant with this one because it seems to be like right around the corner that should everything align, that we would have a new bylaw and then the normal process would take place. I think I'd feel a little more comfortable saying yes to this one if, it was way down the road, 6 months or something like that. So my preference would be to wait.
Mayor Marakis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think similarly as we're stating that we would, let's wait and see. We're very close to making some changes. It's not that far down the road, just as Councillor Gallo mentioned. I think that maybe we can wait a little bit for this one. I think we'll get a good sense come that public planning meeting where we're going. If there's a sense that it's going to take even longer at that point, well, then maybe this is something that we can revisit in a couple of weeks and take action on it. But I think in the meantime, at this particular moment, I feel more comfortable. And let's get to that public planning meeting. Let's see what we're doing before we decide to exempt anything or before we decide to make any changes. So that's where I fall on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cook, so my question would be, how can Mr. and Mrs. Stinson come back with a request for exemption, in the first GC, the first cycle of February then, just to confirm?
It's not really a planning matter, so I'll default that questions to the town clerk.
Sorry, you know what, it'd be, Mr. Clerk, first cycle in February would be a likely date for this to come back to us, should the planning meeting not encompass all the things that we're hoping for?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's a number of things that are involved that I couldn't speak definitively whether it would come back in the first in February or not. I'd have to think about it a bit more and talk to other staff as well.
Okay. Councillor Thompson?
I guess the big assumption here is that come January 30th, we all agree, and it doesn't get extended beyond that. And because, I mean, we only have one cycle of meetings in February, and so, I guess my concern is that, as Councillor Gallo just mentioned, it might be 6 months before all this is done, and then before we invite them back. And then, again, you got to add the fact that then a new bylaw's got to be passed for the exemption as well. Again, I go back to the reasonableness. They want to move forward with their new home. Why hold them hostage?
Councillor Gilliland for the first time on the amendment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just listening to all the comments and about this said property, Church Street, and I do feel for the property owners, but I still feel comfortable waiting till the 30th. The homeowners admitted that they did purchase this home in August, which was after the interim control bylaw had been enacted. I think that once we start exempting things now, it is a slippery slope, and we have had exemptions on properties to accommodate accessibility, and it caused a lot of grief on a house on Wells Street. Not to say that this is the exact same situation, I don't think it is, but I do feel that we should at least wait until January 30th and perhaps come back to the table.
Mayor Marakis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if we could table this and table it till that first meeting in February. And that would give us ample opportunity to see what happens on the 30th and then come back and discuss this and make a decision at that time. That way we're not allowing it to go too long. We're giving ourselves some time to have an understanding of where we're going to go, and then we can make a more informed decision on this one, and one that everyone would be more comfortable in making at that time. So I'm not sure, Mr. Clerk, through you, Mr. Chair, if we could table that. Yeah, but
Mr. Clerk, can you help us out here in terms of the next step?
It's procedurally, it's difficult. I don't think you're able to table an amendment. At least I'm not aware of doing that. So I think if the amendment was withdrawn and maybe there could be a motion in new business to table the request. That could be a way. If council was to table it, I think that might be the way to do it, is through new business to table the request for the exemption.
Yeah, Mayor Marcus.
Thank you. And the only reason I'm putting that out there is because I would hate to see that we defeat this, and then we would have to look at doing a reconsideration or something. And so I wouldn't want to go down that road. So I'd prefer to do something, whether it's new business, as the clerk mentions. Let's try to figure this out so we can get to a point that we're all agreeing.
Mr. Nadrasny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask the clerk and our planning professionals to listen to this because in case I make a mistake. But my understanding is that this request could be made at any time while the interim control bylaw is in place. The reason for bringing it forward now was that we didn't want to pass a new interim control bylaw at the next meeting and at the very next meeting be showing up to amend it. But procedurally, I don't think anything precludes us from doing that. So if this were withdrawn now, then at any point, a motion could be, the same motion could be brought forward to exempt the property from the interim control bylaw, which would allow you to do this in February or March or whenever you want to. But I think the cleanest way would be to withdraw this as opposed to defeat it, although the clerk and I were discussing a defeat, and even a defeat of an amendment at a committee meeting isn't necessarily binding, so it's not really, it could still probably come back.
It doesn't cause reconsideration.
Right.
Councillor Humphries?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I know it's so. I would have supported this evening. However, I don't want to see it defeated. And I think some of our council peers would probably like to support it as well. It's just so close to 30th that what I'm hearing is they're asking us to perhaps wait until the first GC after the planning meeting to put this back on the table for the individuals that are coming forward tonight. And then we can vote, everyone understanding what the next steps are for the bylaw, whether it's going to be, what we see from our public planning, whether it's information we're getting from, other public members, but we'll be able to, other people will be able to, other peers at the table will be able to vote on this a little more comfortably, I think is what I'm hearing on after the 30th, which is 2 weeks away. So, I don't mind, but I'll follow my peers lead, Councillor Thompson. If you want to keep this on the table, that's fine with me right now, but we'll just put it back on the 1st of February anyway, if it gets defeated tonight. But perhaps our peers would rather vote with a little more understanding of the bylaw changes on the 30th. So I will commit that this will come back at the first GC after the planning meeting, if this gets withdrawal tonight.
Councillor Thompson?
Through you to the clerk, would it not be simpler just to refer it to the next cycle?
Mr. Clerk?
I know, that's what but so we're tabling an amendment. Why can't we refer an amendment? Oh, we're not tabling? We got rid of that? Okay. So then my question then is if it gets withdrawn, then how does it get placed back on the agenda? Through a notice of motion and all that process?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the way we handled this last year, which I was prepared to, which we could have done tonight if this was not on the agenda, was a motion, new business, to bring forward a bylaw amendment. It was fine then. I would be okay with it this term as well.
Mr. Thompson?
Okay. Well, I am sensing the will around the table of my council colleagues that they would prefer to postpone this decision, so I will withdraw the amendment.
Okay, so the amendment's withdrawn. We'll go back to the main motion. Yeah, okay. Mayor Marcus, you have the floor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson still has the floor.
Nope,
you're done.
Just a minute.
Okay. Mayor Marcus. No. Councillor Humphries on the main motion.
No, that was before.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I still don't seem to have clarity on this, at least for myself. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Cook. Mr. Cook, if we put the interim control bylaw in place, it would be the same process done at the same time to withdraw that when we're giving notice to the public, to withdraw that and to put forward changes to the zoning bylaw. We wouldn't have to withdraw, we wouldn't have to go to the public to take away the interim control bylaw and then go through a separate process to change the zoning bylaws. It could be all done in one process, or perhaps you could find out for next week, because we don't want to add another layer onto this.
Mr. Cook?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I'll certainly look into that in more details about the process in terms of the time frame, but that's a good question. I can look into that.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes, Mr. Clerk. Go to R2, Winter Maintenance Report. Can someone move that, please? Councillor Gardner, a second. Councillor Humphreys, comments or questions? Councillor Gallo?
Just a quick one to the director. I think I know the answer, but I'll ask it anyway. It bothers me that other bodies have impose service increases on us without any input to us. So I just, in terms of number 3 and the anti-icing, which seems to be the big one, just a confirmation that there are no other options for us other than to go this route, and with the brine, salt, liquid application, whatever it's considered, to the roads. Is that the only option that we have through you, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it's not the only option you have. First of all, you don't necessarily have to do what we're recommending you do based on the provincial maintenance standards. And we are suggesting it be done in-house because we believe that we could have better control over it. However, that doesn't mean that at the time of deliberating whether or not you wish to buy this piece of equipment in the capital budget, and we're not suggesting you make a decision on that tonight. We're suggesting that be done in the 2020 capital budget. You could be looking at a contract service. So there are options that could be looked into, but we need to at least get the ball rolling, or start the ball rolling on those discussions, so that staff can start putting together some options if council wishes us to venture down that road.
So 3, just as a follow-up, so that's good to hear that we might be able to either partner with other municipalities or figure out perhaps a different way of doing it. I just want to confirm that in terms of no other options, we don't have any of this kind of equipment in order to comply with whatever regulations. We currently do not have any of this type of equipment in order to comply with the regulations.
Mr. Downey?
Through Mr. Chair, they refer to pre-treating the roads. So theoretically, we could go around with a salt truck on bare pavement and salt roads on a regular basis, waiting for it to snow. So it's not a practical solution, and in fact, in the new legislation, it says we're practicable, which is actually a word, and so that's not practicable to continue to put salt on a road. This is the most practicable solution, is to put the brine solution, which would then be activated when the weather activates it. Other than that, it sits on the road.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gilliland?
Through you, Mr. Chair, first I want to say thank you very much for a very detailed report. There was a ton of information. It was super helpful. I really loved it. And I know we had some conversation, and I was hoping that maybe you could speak to some of the reports that were presented previously about either the success or lack of success in regards to the snow windrow clearing. And I was hoping you could kind of verify the number of residents that participated and what the results are for that.
Mr. Downey?
Certainly, and thank you for your call. We had identified in the report on page 3 of 17 that there were some previous reports with regards to windrows. The question came to me, have we ever looked at this before? Yes, we have. 11 years ago we looked at this. The Council of the Day asked us to look at a windrow clearing program specifically targeted at seniors and physically challenged residents. Four reports were produced, which you have before you. The first one on June 17th, and it was following direction of the General Committee of March 18th of 2008, giving staff direction to move forward with the program. The staff looked at different municipalities that had got into programs along this line. What staff are looking at today is not exactly the same. We're looking at a town-wide system. However, this was specifically targeted at people who had difficulty clearing windrows. And other municipalities were looking at it at the time and have looked at it in the past. They were looking at a clearing program that windrows would be cleared from their residents within 24 hours after an event. There were also public hearings held, and about 80 residents had identified that they'd be willing to pay a nominal fee if this service was put in place. So with that information, staff prepared a report, and council started moving forward with this specific windrow program. As part of the report, they'd also identified what it would cost for windrow removal in the entire community, and back in those days it was 14,000 residents, and it was estimated that that would cost about $700,000 per year. The next report came out in October, and it asked council to look at a windrow program in consultation with our existing provider, our snowplow operator, and that was somewhat problematic. They required a minimum of 250 driveways to be part of the program in order for that to be feasible to the contractor. We felt that was quite a reach, but that was a target that certainly we were looking at for the pilot program. Fortunately, it fell short of that, but I'll get to that shortly. Additional to that, in consultation with other municipalities that were looking at this program and doing this program, they were also looking at half a full-time equivalent staff person to deal with the administration. And actually, when we finally got into the report, that was also underestimated. It was also hoped that this program, if it was successful, would ramp up to about 500 participants over a 3-year program. The final report to council on the program prior to it being initiated was in November 18th of 2008, and that we get into a program, a 3-year service program, pilot program for residents, and that the clearing be identified on a 24-hour basis after the snow event. It would be there would be some cost recovery identified with regards to it, and council endorsed the program. They did provide some options, staff did provide some options, such as dealing with the neighborhood network and their volunteer services, looking at high schools or local high schools to be able to perhaps deliver services through volunteering as well. However, we did an in-house program that was cost shared. The final report was done in May of 2009 following the program, and staff recommended canceling the pilot program based on a number of different reasons. The windrow program didn't turn out to be as successful as they had hoped. As I said, they were looking for 250 residents. They got 39. And so that was well below the program. The other issue was if you enter into a windrow program, you're not out in every event. Because some events, as you know, create a higher windrow than others. So of the snowstorms that happened in 2008 and 9, there were only 5 events that actually required windrow removal. And just to give you some idea, this year alone, we've already been out 28 times dealing with road maintenance, which is actually 7 times more than last year. So if you think this has been an easy winter, it's actually been a more difficult winter as far as road operations go. But none of those storms would have actually activated a windrow initiation. With that, they then did some costing, and of that 39 participants, the cost was somewhere around $4,200, or about $100 a resident, in order to make that happen. There was also a satisfaction survey, and of that, 67% of those 39 folks did not find the program useful or beneficial, and 25 would consider not participating, or would consider participating in the following year, or 75% were not interested. So your 39 would be reduced by 3/4. And with that, even with the service delivery of 24 hours or 1 day after a storm, the staff were able to actually get many of the windrows cleared within 4 hours. But even with that accelerated service, people still weren't satisfied. 4 hours was still too long after the snowplow went by. So that's a bit of an issue. On top of that, it actually took 5 times longer to administer the program than to deliver the program. So if it took an hour to clear the windrows, it was 5 hours on the phone or administration in order to deal with that. So it took a tremendous amount of time for residents or for staff to deal with residents' concerns. So that was some of the history of the program that we had before. As I said, it was focused primarily on residents, seniors, and physically challenged. The report you have before you is a town-wide program. It deals with almost 19,000 driveways, and we estimate, although we haven't got an actual cost or gone out to the market, but we're looking at somewhere around $1.5 million in order to deliver that program. Would you like me to carry on, or?
Nope.
Okay, fair enough. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I get the message. It's great. With the new policies for safety with the brining and such, I just want to confirm that the operating cost was just specifically just for gas maintenance and the brine solution, because it's not going to be incurring any extra staffing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. The one advantage of doing the brining is we do it at off times. So when we're not plowing, we can do brining. Or, for instance, we know there's a great probability there's going to be an event on Saturday. We'd be building up towards that Saturday event.
Councillor Gilliland?
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Chair. Last year we had 2 severe weather events. Is that what you call it? Is that fair to say?
Mr. Downey?
We had, I don't know how you want to classify it, the ice storm in April really was the impetus for a lot of these discussion, because it was extremely heavy, and there was a lot of it in a short period of time, and that's a rarity. It's one of the things that we're identifying in the report is this is a rare occurrence. I don't know whether a similar occurrence happened in March of 2008, which asked that council to look at the program. But last year we had one event that we, quite frankly, had difficulty getting cleared.
Another question, if I may, Mr. Chair, which may go to communications. So I understand that for severe weather events that you would first send to the website and then follow up with social media outlets and the media. And I know that there's been talk about supporting the residents with the possibility of reaching out to volunteers like the Neighborhood Network, and I don't know if it's a good idea, if it makes sense, or it's something that we have the power to do, or if even that's something that they want, but would it make sense in these rare instances that when we do a severe weather alert event, that perhaps we say, inform our residents of Neighborhood Network's services of volunteer to help seniors or people who really need help with their driveways.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do that quite frequently already when there is a significant snowfall or weather event. We often encourage people to register with Neighbourhood Network to help out their neighbours, but we also encourage people that may need assistance to contact Neighbourhood Network as well.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is sounding a lot like parking around Town Park, go parking, the train whistle. You know, I don't know how we try and do this and please everyone. It just seems to me, I'm looking at page 12, when they were looking at this in Vaughan, the cost to the municipality was this was 2016, was $2.65 million. That would lead to a property tax increase of 2.8, or an annual cost of $43.75 for what I think is probably the average home price in 2016. It sounds like a lot of money and it sounds like a huge increase, but if you take it down to what it actually would cost the taxpayer, and if it's going to cost them an annual cost of $44, you know, it doesn't seem very onerous. So one of the suggestions here was, it's on page 14, to do a survey and to determine the base, and to be determined based on public demand whether we go through with this. I think if you put it down into, Mr. Downey, and maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I need some financial help over there. But if we're going to go out to the residents and say, this is going to cost an extra $50 to your tax bill if we do windrow clearing, my guess is that almost everybody would say yes. So that would be what I take from this report, would be that for once and for all, we go out and do a proper survey, give proper information like this is going to cost you X amount of money per year, and see if they want it, because there are a lot of people. I don't understand why we didn't have that uptake when we offered the program. And I think actually the department went out and kind of hand shoveled or hand plowed the driveways of the people that did want it, because we couldn't afford to go out and get a contractor. But if you put this to me, I would certainly pay $50 to try and deal with the windrows. I lived on Murray, and boy, that was a hard job. And the population is aging. The only thing is, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Downey, or perhaps Mr. Gartner, when we're talking about the average cost per household, are we also including apartments and condos? Because it wouldn't seem to me to be fair to put this on them.
Mr. Gardner?
I believe that this stat here is based on all Richmond Hill
homes
data, I believe. Is that correct, Al? So I'm not sure what they consider to be an average assessed home.
Okay.
Also, the tax impact would be much larger to us because we have a smaller total assessment base versus Richmond Hill would have. So it'd be, for us, I did the calc quickly, a $2.65 million would be about a 5.8% tax impact to us. So it's much clearer. So this is all Richmond Hill data that you're looking at.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Well, even if we excluded all the apartments and condos and the size of our community, and the average price of a house is certainly much more than $600,000 now. I think we should know what it would cost, because maybe even people would go for it for $120 or $130, or at least to try it for a year, because we'd be contracting out. We wouldn't be buying the equipment. Is that right, Mr. Downey? We wouldn't be buying the equipment for us to do in-house.
Through Mr. Chair, if we did this, we would recommend going outside. Richmond Hill is doing it in-house, and their clearing is 30 hours after the event, they'll come and do your windrow. So that's the program that they're having in Richmond Hill.
Okay, that's no good.
And with that, they're still implementing it, and they're moving forward with it. So I think there's going to be some issues if 2 days after the snow, it's still there. There may be some concern.
Councillor
Okay,
Gardner?
I'll rethink it for the next meeting, but I mean, certainly, if you're going to have your windrows cleared, you want them cleared right away.
Mayor Marakis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Gardner. Mr. Gardner, is it possible to get that on a per household basis, that number, dollar figure for next week?
Mr. Gardner?
Yes, it would be. And the original tax impact I quoted earlier, that was based on a 2.65 estimated cost, but as Al pointed out, it's 1.5 million to us, so that's about a 3.3% impact to us. But yeah, I could get that for you as based on an average assessed home in Aurora.
Thank you, and I think that that'd be useful information for all of us while we're making this decision. But also, I'm not opposed to going out to a public consultation. My concern with that is obviously in something like this, depending on when you do it. If you do it when it's snowing outside, most people would be like, yeah, you know what? While they're shoveling that windrow, they're going to be like, yeah, I don't mind paying a little bit extra for you to come by and do this for me instead of doing it myself. Whereas if you did it in the middle of summer and you said, hey, do you want us to raise your taxes and we'll clear the end of your driveway? They're going to be like, no. And so I think that there is a bit of an issue of when you do the public consultation. So, I mean, as I said, I'm not opposed to doing it and finding out what the public thinks in general, but I think also the timing of it is important. So I'll just leave that with everyone and with staff, but I'm looking forward to getting that number next week. Thank you, Mr. Gardner.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I think there's 18,000 homes in Aurora, roughly. $1.5 million. Easy math. It's about $80 a home. That's my guess. So we'll see about next week. If there's 18,000 homes and it costs $1.5 million per home, it seems like it, but I'll let Jason do the math. But I just want to follow up on what Mr. Downey said. So through you to Mr. Downey. Ms. Downey, you talked about the fact that I think it was Richmond Hill's proposing it's a 30-hour turnaround for windrow. I'd also heard there was concerns with Vaughan similarly. Even though they have an active program, there is a bit of a time delay. And I know that a few times I've seen in conversations with other councillors there that, I don't know, I think there's a 24-hour lag or something with theirs. I don't know if you know what the time window is for the clearing of windrows in Vaughan.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it's 24 hours. But I believe they do better than that. The leg, and we've had some conversations with them because one of the issues that come with windrow is what happens when it's garbage day. And where do people put their garbage, and how do you clear the windrow when there's garbage at the end of the driveway? And what Vaughan has had to do is an extensive education program to tell people to not put it in an area where the windrow is going to affect it. Miller has indicated to them that they will not walk further up the driveway in order to get their garbage, and GFL has told us exactly the same thing. What Vaughan has done in some cases has delayed plowing the windrows until people have brought their recycling back in, the recycling bins back in, so that there's not an interference or a damaging to their blue box. So it varies, but they have 2 staff specifically assigned to windrows.
And just like, we get lots of calls whenever there's a snowstorm. My understanding is Vaughan gets lots of calls with regards to the windrow clearing program because, they're like, well, where are they? They need to clear my driveway, and it's 6 hours later, 12 hours later. And so I think that I'm fine with going out to a survey, but I think we've got to be realistic. And you say, okay, would you be willing to pay an extra $100 in your taxes? But it may be not till the next day we clear your windrow. I mean, that's the reality of the program for $1.5 million. And so we've got to be cautious about setting expectations should we choose to proceed. Personally, I don't think it's worth it.
My perspective is that, at first the idea of having windrows, and I know, when I see the shovel come in and I come in from work and I see that, 3 feet of ice, it's really painful to see. But I can see that having windrow service, it'll be a $1.5 million service that will probably give us more of a headache after the fact than the windrows, the need for windrow service to begin with. And I think we should be cautious if we put this out to the public, because given that Aurora has a higher leaning towards seniors, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It's just that if you're going to put in a fair survey, you're going to have a certain segment of the population that's going to be voting a certain way, and it's going to be very biased. Whereas, Richmond Hill or other areas, who knows what their demographics are. So demographics will skew the public vote, and so, I think we should take note of that as well. Councillor Gardner for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Johnny. Mr. Johnny, I'm looking at page 17 at the very bottom. So I'm understanding there's two different ways to clear windrows. One is to have the equipment right on the snowplow. So that's not what we're talking about?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we looked at that in 2008 with Trison, and other municipalities have looked at it. It slows the plow down to a crawl, and so it takes a much longer time to clear the roads, and that's our main priority. We need to make sure our roads are safe, and we need to move on that as quickly as we possibly can, and then we go in and do some of our secondary efforts, which would be a windrow. Our concerns is we don't want to sacrifice what our primary function is, which is safe roadways to travel, in order to ensure that there's no windrows. So that's why we're recommending two separate pieces of equipment. Extremely difficult to have one follow the other, because one moves much quicker than the other. So it would be a separate contract that once an event was done, then you would activate this new equipment.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys for the first time.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. And yeah, this report is fantastic. It's great. It's very, very detailed. Just a quick question, and I'm not. It looks like it's extremely expensive, and I'm a little bit worried about public consultation. We may have to go that route depending on how things go. But the actual vehicle that removes the windrow, is it a separate vehicle? Is that why it's so? I know all the reasons for why. Would you mind, through you, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, we're recommending, and Vaughan has separate equipment. Okay. You can put a special wing on a plow. Problem is, you're going slow, it's extremely time consuming. The other issue with regards to that is if you are plowing this car on the road and you're plowing around it, you're not getting a windrow into the driveway. We then soon thereafter get a phone call, you need to come back and plow. So then we plow, and then we put that windrow into the driveway, and then there's an expectation we also remove that windrow as well. So that's part of the complication with trying to make sure that you would address the service in a reasonable fashion.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My main concern is I just feel that this would be a huge impact on seniors as far as the cost. Seniors right now, I feel, don't really have the funds to be increasing their taxes by, I think, what we are guessing, $100. And I also don't think that it's really fair that a lot of these seniors, there's a high population of seniors who are living in condos, and to stipulate this extra added cost would be even more expensive. So I'd really have concerns about this added cost. The other concern I have is that when we had done this pilot project in the past, that to echo what Mayor Rax was saying, that 67% of people were dissatisfied with the actual service. So it's kind of like you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't. So we're going to be maybe possibly looking at providing a service that's really not going to be solving any issues. In fact, just maybe creating more problems. But talking about, I just want to go back to this brine thing. I don't know if this is something that was considered because this is new and this is that's been mandated. Perhaps this extra brining application is going to be acting as a nice accelerator, so it's stopping that accumulation of snow. So as far as I'm concerned, maybe the windrows will be a lot less to maintain on a residential basis. We really don't know what the acts of this brining is going to do. It could be a really positive effect, and you know, there's no sense in investing in more money that is not necessary. Has any studies been presented about the brine and what it actually will do?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the brining, we think it's going to do two things. First of all, it's going to give us a window so that when we call out our staff, as you can appreciate, it takes us time to get staff in and get the trucks deployed. So while that's taking place, that brine is doing its job and continues to make those roads safe. It also, as we then plow that up, that brine is in that snow, and it raises the freezing, lowers the freezing temperature, so it's more difficult to freeze that windrow. So we're not going to have quite the job. It's going to be a little bit heavier, but at least it won't be as solid in ice. And that was one of the issues in April. People were having great difficulty dealing with the ice.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. My only concern is about Clause 4. Do you feel, Mr. Downey, that you've been fully trained and equipped to fulfill your role as the Special Weather Event Coordinator?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's called a significant weather event, and it's the one thing within the document that we really appreciate it, and that is Council has approved maintenance standards for snow removal, and so we make every effort to make sure that those standards are met or exceeded. What happens is sometimes we run into an event where we have difficulty doing that. The April storm was a good example of that, and municipalities took different tactics at it. For instance, Newmarket didn't do any plowing at all. They just waited till it melted because they knew in 2 days it was going to get warm. We decided we were going to go out, and other municipalities decided they're only going to do main roads and they weren't going to do any of the arterials. So there's a different strategy with regards to that. But at times there is more there's more weather activity than we can handle, and if we can't meet our maintenance standards, this gives us the option to say, okay, we can't meet it, we're calling a significant weather event, and we do not need to meet our standards now. So our duty of care is released from us momentarily or temporarily until we can get the roads and the sidewalks and everything else cleared, and then we can take the significant weather event off, and we can move back to our normal procedure. So that's one of the things that we find is a real beneficial within this document. We would have called a significant weather event last April because we didn't clear the roads in that given period of time. We just put every piece of equipment we could at it, but we couldn't make it. So we were very happy to see this part of the legislation come forward.
So I believe that's Marco Rumuno speak for saying I am equipped and trained. Okay.
I'm as equipped as anybody else in the room, I would say. I certainly rely on the rest of my staff, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I think I'm adequately equipped in order to make a decision like that.
Yes, given our population, I do believe that you have the intestinal fortitude to carry out this position. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Downey, and I apologize if you've already answered this, but the new process with the salt brine solution, does that increase the overall salt in our water, wastewater? And is that a concern?
Through you, it is. Yes, it does, and it is. So remember I talking about the 28 events? One of the things that we've done this year, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about this, but is we were concerned about the amount of salt that we're actually using on the roads. So we took some steps this year to reduce that salt and see if it had any negative impacts with regards to any of our the conditions of our roads, and we find that it hasn't. So even though we have been out more events this year, and many of those events have been salt events, we were actually using less salt than last year. So we still think we're putting too much salt on our parking lots, for instance. You'll see a lot of residual salt in our parking lots. So this is something that is very much in our mind. First of all, it's expensive. It's a limited quantity, particularly this year. So we want to make sure that we're not putting any more on the road than absolutely necessary. So we have actually computerized down our spinners, Dickie Johns, but anyway, to make sure that they don't put as much salt on. So we're taking some efforts. But yes, if we put that brine on, it will add to it, but not significantly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. There are no further comments or questions. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes, Mr. Clerk. Let's see if we can get one more before the break. Someone like to move R3, request for sponsorship policy? Councillor Gillan, second. Councillor Gardner, comments or questions? Councillor Thompson?
Certainly overall, I like the direction that we're heading with regards to formalization of the policy and having some documentation in terms of being able to assess the so-called value of the various events and make sure that, as the saying goes, the town is getting bang for its buck. I guess my only concern really is that the way it's stated now, really, $10,000 is being set aside for the sponsorship of events, and to me that seems low, based on previous budgets and the various events, and just even based on some recent delegations that we've had and stuff. So I did note that in the report it did talk about perhaps directing staff to review that number, and during our 2019 budget deliberations perhaps increasing or making a request to increase it. And I think that again they should go back and review them all, the various events that we do support and have supported historically, and perhaps maybe make an adjustment to that figure. I can either address that to Mr. Nadarozny or Ms. Mackenzie Smith, whoever would like to comment on that.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith?
Through you, Mr. Chair. You are correct that on page 2 of the report, I have addressed the fact that the $10,000 allocation may be reassessed during the 2019 budget process. And what the intention would be is to for us to come up prior to that budget process with an optimal amount based on events that we have sponsored in the past or events that we feel would be beneficial for the town to sponsor, and then present that number in the process.
Right. That's my only comment. Otherwise, I think it's a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Following on Councillor Thompson's comment, when I'm looking at the criteria on page 2 and 3, they seem, they make sense to me. They seem to be good for Aurora. And
hello, is it me you're looking for?
What did you do to me? We've had a little problem with Siri this evening. No, didn't it happen to you in the other meeting? Yeah. So the criteria, they make a lot of sense, and they make a lot of sense for why Aurora should be supporting these. So if you find that you need more money that falls within this criteria, then we can look at that. But thank you for establishing this.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes. Let's just do another one. We're on a roll. Will someone move R4 building appraisals? Councillor Gardner, and seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Comments or questions, please? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Just as a summary, just so I get this correct, we we assessed our properties, I think it was 2002, 3. And every year since then, our broker made recommendations to increase by whatever that percentage is, 2-3%. And now we're at the point where we're questioning whether or not we have enough value allocated to our various properties to be safe in terms of insurance. The total being 182 million on, there's 38 items, I'm not sure how many properties. The cost to reassess is $55,000, and I'm just throwing this out, and I have no idea whether it'll stick or not, but I'm curious to see if we were to bump that 180 million to 200, 220, 250 million, what the premium increase would be. And would it be far less than the $55,000? I don't know, and I don't know whether or not that's a valid question for our insurer, whether or not they could even, I suspect so, because I suspect there's probably another line allocated to all these properties in terms of, I assume, the premium allocated to each property, or maybe it's a lump sum based on the total. I don't know. But in my limited experience, increasing the value of the property doesn't necessarily increase dramatically the premium costs for the insurance. And again, I'm just throwing this out there because how do we determine what that correct number is? And maybe 250 is overdoing it, and there's nothing wrong with that if our premiums don't go up significantly. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. I don't know if the director has any comments or not. If somehow we could establish a comfort level of what that total amount is for all of our properties. As we know, this doesn't include land value, and while it's in the best interest of the municipality to be prudent and, probably from a liability perspective, spend the money and have some expert tell us that this is the value of our properties. I get all of that, and I'm just trying to find a different angle to see how to save $55,000 basically, and still accomplish the same thing. I don't know if the director has any comments. Probably
Ms.
not.
Van Loon, can you comment on that, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this, in my opinion, there is a risk in not undertaking to do this because we would be likely underinsured going forward. So from a risk management perspective, I think it would be in the town's best interest to protect our assets and ensure that we are properly insured based on current values.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough to argue with that, and my only comment is for the past 14 years we've been experienced that potential risk. I just really hate insurance companies, and the likelihood of every one of our assets to go up in smoke is so minuscule that. But anyway, someone's got to make money.
Councillor Gardner?
Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. So there's a long list of buildings here. If we did what Councillor Gallo suggested, is our insurance policy based on the appraisal of each one of these buildings? Or is it kind of a blanket coverage, in which case we could actually, I think, do what Councillor Gallo suggested?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you will see on the attachment that the current insured value is based on each building or each asset, each facility.
Okay.
So they are itemized.
Thank you. So even though we were covered for X amount of dollars, if it was one building that was damaged, it would be that building's actual value that would be replaced.
That is correct.
Thank you. And then does this include the $55,000? Does that include the heritage appraisal for the Church Street School? Yes? Thank you.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphries?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for the report. I was just going through all the buildings and our assets. So just so I'm clear, I mean, we have insurance, and this is the current building value, content equipment value, and then current insured value today is what we have today. Just to make sure, through you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. That's the current insured value on the schedule. We're looking to undertake to do the appraisals and update this list based on current market values.
And I know this is going to sound like a really crazy question, so forgive me, but do we typically do this? Is it a normal process? Because I'm just putting my own insurance, once I have insurance on my house, I never get it reappraised. So does the insurance, usually the insurance comes to my house or my property and does their appraisals. So we're going to are we hiring the insurance company or hiring a specialist to do this? Sorry.
Ms. Van Loon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are going to hire a consultant to appraise our buildings and assets and facilities. This has not been done since 2003. So therefore, we feel that we are not appraised at current values. And Legal Services in this report has recommended that we undertake to do this every 5 years.
Oh, okay, perfect. So thank you. I'm sorry, I should have probably read that. Apologies. But no, I appreciate that. I think we need to protect ourselves for sure, especially the Church Street School. We have some incredible artifacts, obviously, in there, and it's very, very special buildings. So, and others. So no, I appreciate that. I guess just sometimes I just thought the way insurance companies work is we make a big change, they come, and then they note, and then there's a kind of a, I think they decide how it increases in value or not. But if this is the right way to go, then let's do it. Because again, we don't want to blow our chances on anything terrible happening and not getting our monies back for sure. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Gartner. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we've had a conversation in the past that had to do with the new PSAB accounting rules and with the auditor, that there actually was some sort of requirement for us with regards to the valuation of our buildings in terms of the overall asset management. Am I off base here, or?
Mr. Gardner?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of fair market value, which this is, the existing PSAB rules don't require a fair market value assessment of our assets. However, if we were, say, a private listed company or something, the new accounting standards require a fair market value assessment, but we haven't reached that point from a PSAB standpoint yet.
Thank you.
Great. If there are no further questions, let's put this to the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes, Mr. Clerk, and reaches to our halfway point. So, or sorry, hopefully not halfway point. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Okay, if everyone can take their seats, please. Gift exchanges, exchange policies done in business hours. Okay, so we'll, next on the agenda is R5, Sole Source Award for Simcoe Refrigeration. Would someone move that, please? Councillor Gilliland and Mr. Mayor or Mr. Marakis. Comments or questions? Councillor Gallo?
Just to express my disdain, I guess is strong enough, with sole sourcing and companies that have a somewhat of monopoly, that we have really no choice. I don't know how we selected the two companies that's on the agenda, and whether or not that was part of the discussion. But it just bothers me that we have to do this and we have no choice. I'm sure we're not unlike many other municipalities, I assume, but just to express my disdain.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. I guess you're not too much in favor of sole sourcing. Councillor Thompson.
Just to follow up on that, I know I had a conversation with the CAO, and I do agree. I mean, I look back at some of the older reports when we chose to go with Simcoe, and I just think that in future reports, it would be good to add into the report the fact that to some degree, they're the only ones that can service their own equipment, and just as part of the knowledge base when we make these decisions to tender or award it to various companies. And so I know in my conversation with the CAO, he was in agreement with that. So doesn't help us today, but going forward, at least it makes council aware.
Okay, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. It was the same comment for this report and for the next report, and basically what Michael said. My question was to staff: do they see this as a problem when we decide on an original provider, whether this is taken into consideration? So if it hasn't been, then I think it has to be, and it does need to come to council. Thank you.
If there are no further comments, put that to the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. That passes. R6, Sole Source Award for Johnson's Control Canada. Would someone move that, please? Councillor Gilliland. Second. Councillor Humphreys. Comments or questions? Okay. I'll put it to a vote then. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes, Mr. Clerk. R7, Mr. CAO, did you have any comments for R7?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for completion of this motion, it's recommended that Council, for recommendation number 2, we've discussed it and we feel that at this point, at least in the development of the BIA, the best person would be our lead on economic development, which would be Anthony Arullo. So we're suggesting that he would be the staff name that you would put on the BIA on your behalf.
Okay, and second? Okay, seconded by Councillor Gardner, and Mayor Marakis motioned it. Comments or questions on R7? Okay, no questions or comments. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes, Mr. Clerk. R8, early approval of capital project number 42808, Corporate Energy Management Plan Update. Would someone put that on the floor, please? Councillor Gardner, and seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this is very important. I'm glad to see it on the agenda. I just wanted to ask through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Mahale. We did have a communication about the ASHRAE audit, and I do have a motion that was passed for council about that audit, and there was some information that was going to come back to council that hasn't as yet. But could you comment on how that ASHRAE audit might fit in with this or impact this, or possibly save us work?
Ms. Mahale?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the ASHRAE energy audit will be a background study for the consultant we will hire to prepare the corporate energy management plan. So they will look at this report, and they will take the energy efficiency measures that are recommended in that report, and they will be part of the roadmap that will be for the next 5 years that represent the community energy management plan 2019.
Thank you. I'm just going to remind council there was an audit done. I don't know how much it cost us. It was done maybe in 2015, and it looked at energy consumption in all of our equipment, our facilities. It recommended improvements, estimated costs, potential payback. And that report never came back to council. So I found that very disappointing. And when I brought forward the motion, I was told that some of the things had been done. Some of the recommendations of the consultant had actually been done. But we don't know what was and what wasn't. So I feel confident to leave it in your hands that you will use it to the best of your ability, because otherwise, it's a complete waste of money that we spent on this. Thanks. When will this be ready?
As soon as council approves the funding, we are ready with technical specifications, and we can tender in a couple of weeks and have a consultant very soon, by the end of February. So we have at least 4 months to deliver the project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, on page 2, it speaks to the second paragraph, the Community Energy Plan, CEP, also called Municipal Energy Plan, MEP, provides a roadmap for the broader community within Aurora's municipality. At council request, to complete the study, staff applied for funding from Ontario Ministry of Environment and from the federal government, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM. At this time, FCM has approved the funding for Aurora. However, the Ontario Minister of Environment has indicated that they are waiting to receive direction on the future of MEP program and will inform the town when funding is available. Is that funding directly related to the capital project, and to help fund this capital project?
Ms. Mahale?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, we are talking here about 2 separate studies. The one that we are asked funding today is the Corporate Energy Management Plan. The second one is Community Energy Plan, or otherwise called Municipal Energy Plan. The difference is that the Corporate Energy Management Plan refers only to the town-owned buildings, operations, and services offered by the town. Energy efficiency measures in town buildings, fleet, sewage pumping stations. These are the type of operations and facilities that we are looking part of the Corporate Energy Management Plan. Community Energy Plan looks at the energy efficiency measures townwide, including private businesses, residences, everything that it is within the municipal boundary of Aurora. And for this community energy plan, previous council asked us to obtain 100% funding from federal government and Ministry of Environment. Federal government confirmed the funding. However, Ministry of Environment, after the election, told us that they are not sure if they want to continue with this program. However, I talked to the ministry at the beginning of January, in the first week of January, and they confirmed that they will have an answer for us by the end of February regarding this funding.
And through you, this is for the community or the corporate?
Community energy plan. Corporate, it's paid through the town funds, through the studies and others reserve fund.
I think Mr. Nadarasny can chime in here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, so this is you can blame me for the confusion this is causing. I asked for this paragraph to be added. The reason I asked for it is because I know Council is expecting from the previous term the community energy plan, and I just thought they're so close that we're going to get into a conversation about trying to sort the two out. So I suggested in the background that we just remind Council that we still have the community energy plan on the radar and we're awaiting funding. So it really is a separate thing, but it was because they were so close I intended to clarify, not confuse.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Anka. Anka, it says in the report that this project has to be completed by July 1st, and that's why you're asking for early approval. But you know, I do know we have a budget meeting in a couple weeks, and I'm anticipating some of my councillor colleagues might be asking for us to wait until that budget meeting comes before dealing with this. So why do we need to approve it this evening?
Ms. Mahale?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it will save us a month. So we'll have one more month to deliver the project. The timeline is very tight. We have to be ready by July 1st. So if the budget is approved this evening, I can start the procurement process.
But if council did delay it to that budget meeting, which I think is a couple days after January 30th, would it still be possible to get done?
Yes, it's tight already, but the staff will do our best.
I'm just anticipating somebody wanting to move it because it's a couple weeks away.
Okay. May I say something else?
Sure.
If we defer it to the budget deliberation, the budget will be approved at the end of February.
We've done capital before, but okay.
Okay.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. The question is to Mr. Nadarosny about the community energy plan. So we still have a motion pending that says the RFP has to come to council so that council can look at what we're asking of the consultant. So can we start with that? Can that come to council, or do we need to wait till we have a complete staff?
Mr. Nadarasny.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So this is for the community energy plan you're asking about? So I believe the direction of council at the time was that if it was 100% funded, that we would move ahead, and so we've been waiting on the funding answer first. If we don't get if the Ministry of Environment cancels the program, then I would suggest we'd come back with a report saying we've got 50% funding, do you want us to proceed? And then we would move forward if council gives us the direction and the funding.
Councillor Gardner?
My recollection is that there are two separate motions, though. One is the motion from Councillor Abel that wanted to have all the parameters in place and approved by council, and then the second motion was that council would only want it if it was funded 100%. Because it'll be at least 6 weeks probably till we find out. Anyway, I mean, this to me is an important thing, and it's not time sensitive like Ms. Mahale's, but it is sensitive to the environment.
To Mr. Chair, if we got different direction from council, I've taken the interpretation that until we get 100% funding, we haven't moved the project forward, so we haven't done anything with it. But if council wanted us to go ahead and do the work on scoping out the RFP and so on in anticipation of funding it either way, we could get that direction from council and start the work on it.
Okay, I'll see if I can find the first motion. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put this item to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Last one is R9, application for site plan approval, Gotardo Construction. Would someone like to move that, please? Mayor Marakis, second. Someone like to second this? Councillor Humphreys, questions or comments? Okay. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. This was an add-on. I'd like to know if there's any information that staff needs to give us, staff who's not here at the table, or if anybody has any information why this came as an add-on.
Mr. Nadarasne?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This finds its way here as an add-on through a whole series of different events. During the previous term of council, we had indicated to council that we were, staff were recommending moving simple site plan items of this nature to delegated authority. And it was our intention to bring that report to council and get that delegated authority on a broad basis. That report wasn't ready to go until November, and I felt that it wasn't appropriate to ask the previous council to delegate authority, even though it was a very minor housekeeping thing, quite frankly. I felt it wasn't appropriate to ask the previous council to delegate authority to staff as the very last action that they did. Then we can add a bit of an administrative error, and it missed the December agenda. When we did bring this forward for this not being this report, the delegated authority, we did bring it forward in January, and when the mayor had taken a look at it, he had raised some concerns about clarity of the report and some extra information to make it very clear when that delegated authority would apply and under what scenarios it might not. And so we didn't have time to turn that report. This is another short reporting cycle, like with the New Year's and everything. So we didn't have time. So again, thinking it was more administrative, we simply said, okay, then we'll put it on the February. What we didn't anticipate or didn't appreciate was that on this particular development, we had been advancing the project under conditional permits because it was non-site plan related work that they were doing. But we didn't realize that they need a final permit to complete some of the contractual obligations that they have. And so by not giving them the site plan agreement and thereby allowing the full permit to be issued, we were starting to affect their timelines for the project. And so in communication with the company themselves, this was the offer that I put on the table to try and get this done by the end of January so that they could proceed on schedule with their development.
Councilor Gardner?
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comments, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that passes. Mr. Clerk, so that brings us to new business, and I'll start with my left, Councillor Gallo. No? Councillor Johnson?
Just as discussed earlier with regards to the home on Church Street, just to put it on the next agenda, we said we would, I guess, cover it under new business, and so do you need a formal motion?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the way it was dealt with last time was an actual motion to bring forward a bylaw to exempt the property in new business, and so you just wanted a motion to add it to the agenda?
Whatever way you think is the best way to deal with it. I'd prefer to see it on the agenda, so that way, you know, people have an opportunity to speak to it if they'd like. And then the recommendation of council provide direction, and then we'll vote on it at that meeting.
Okay, we can. I don't think there's a motion required. We can take that as direction to put it on.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask, probably to Ms. Van Leeuwen, I'm not sure, maybe to Mr. Cook, are there any guidelines if a residential developer does not finish a construction in a timely manner? I mean, can a house be under construction for 2 or 3 years?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Can we please have one if we don't?
Or Mr.
If
Luck,
there is
or-
an active building permit, then there are no time limits for the completion of a construction project.
So how do neighbors cope with living next to a construction project that goes on for a couple of years, if not more, and maybe it doesn't go on every day, but it goes on and then stops and goes on and stops? It's very annoying. Is there anything that we can do to protect the neighbors?
Ms. Van Loan?
We do have property standards bylaws in place as well as noise bylaws in place to address these other types of nuisances, but a construction project could extend a long period of time, particularly if a homeowner is undertaking to do the work themselves, that often they can span over several years.
And being in the process of construction would not be an offense under the Clean Yards bylaw, unless they weren't keeping the yard clean.
Ms. Van Loan?
Just the fact that you've got a house that's under construction next to you doesn't count.
There is a provision in our property standards bylaw that speaks to construction sites, and there are some allowances that they can store materials related to construction.
Thank you. And what bylaw is that under?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our property standards bylaw.
Oh, thank you.
Mayor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today, I made the trek down to Toronto with a bunch of other mayors, and we got together in what was our first meeting, and hopefully continues to be continuous meetings moving forward where we work together. But we discussed many topics that are, priorities and issues for all of us in regards to transit, sustainable and affordable housing. Some things that weren't specific to us, but refugee resettlement, climate change, which is specific to us as well, and some mental health and addiction funding. And, the conversations around the table were basically the fact that we need to leverage our connections together and become a united front and go to the province and go to the federal government and work as a team to make sure that we get the proper funding and what's needed and the tools needed to get the issues that we're having problems with resolved. And so some of the things as far as transit is that we talked about the need to have seamless integrated transit, and not just on a service level, but also from the fares. The fares right now, they're working towards getting that seamless integration, but they haven't completely done it fully. So those are some of the things that we discussed. I'm encouraged at the fact that we are going to continue this. We're going to continue to work together and continue to move forward in a positive direction to make sure that we provide the best possible solutions to all our residents right across the GTA, which is very encouraging. There was some conversations, and there was a press release from the provincial government in regards to regional governance review that they're going to be putting forward. They are going to be holding some consultations, and I know that there's a couple people that, or a couple of residents and also mayors that might be somewhat a little bit hesitant on what the province is looking at doing, but we're all waiting to see where it goes. Obviously, we all want to make sure that we provide the best possible governance model that provides the best opportunities for all our residents, and so we'll move forward and we'll see how we can provide that. But I think that from a York regional perspective, that all the regional representatives at York Region will continue to fight hard and advocate to make sure that the crazy word of amalgamation doesn't happen. So you can, I guess, everyone can be guaranteed that we at the regional level, especially in York Region, will make sure that we'll do our best to make sure that that doesn't happen, but that we work towards providing that best possible governance model for our residents. So just want to let everyone know about what happened. And like I said, there's going to be more meetings coming forward, and I'll keep everyone updated with those meetings and the topics.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Humphreys? No. Councillor Gilliland? No. Okay, so that concludes this meeting, and can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Gallo, and seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.